Hi, welcome back to Mountain Gym Card Collectibles. Hope you're having a great weekend. Now that Black Friday is over, hopefully you found everything that you wanted and purchased it at a decent price if you're out shopping. I didn't get to hit the stores as much as I wanted to due to the fact we're just dealing with a lot of snow up here in Montana currently. But there were still quite a few people out and about. I did go to Walmart, and they did just get a fresh stock of Pokémon Phantasmal Flames packs, that were going for about, close to $5 each. And they had a few other, hanger packs as well. And there was a lot of interest, there were a lot of people, going through the Pokémon, purchasing the Pokémon, and passing over the sports cards. I guess that the secret is out with sports cards. And what secret is that? Well, sports cards have really turned into just a stepladder, for Topps Fanatics to get rich, Michael Rubin. And, you really have to be a breaking company to enjoy sports cards, whereas, you can go to Walmart, and hopefully they still have some of those Phantasmal Flames packs. For $5, you can get into a nice pack and possibly a great card, And really, that's the old model of sports cards. And sports cards lost that model for one reason or another. I tend to look at the biggest torpedo for the world of sports cards happened not recently, but back in 1993, 94. And what was that? Well, they like to say that was the end of the junk wax era. But really, that was the beginning of the TCG era. That's when Magic came out, I've talked about that before. And ever since this TCG has hit the market, you have, like Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, One Piece, Dragon Ball. They've just been sucking all the oxygen out of the room because, well, let's face it, people want their product and it's more affordable than sports cards. I mean, it's just that easy. So this is kind of an old post from November 13th, just a few weeks ago. But, this comes from Jeff Wilson. I'm not the biggest Jeff Wilson fan out there. But, he said something here that it's really kind of chipping away at the Topps Fanatics Panini machine of, shilling out these big expensive boxes, cards, for the wealthy 1%. And so, like he says here, I never thought this would happen. In September at Cards HQ shop, sold more Pokemon, TCG, and non-sports cards and boxes than it did sports cards and boxes. Then in October, it did the same. This counts retail and e-commerce sales not breaking. The Pokemon market is wild. So, like it says here, within the TCG, what was the percent breakdown between products? Pokemon, One Piece, etc. And so Jeff replies, over 80% Pokemon. One Piece next, then Magic. Everything else much lower. So that says a lot of where he's at. I mean, there's clearly a lot more Pokemon fans where he's at than other TCG. Now, where I live at here in Montana, when I go into my LCS, I tend to feel like, for one reason or another, there's more Magic fans than Pokemon. I'm more into Pokemon than Magic, but it is what it is. Like it says here, thank you for the response. The last big show in Jacksonville, Florida, the Duval show, I noticed more One Piece collectors. Hoopall as well, okay. Trust me, we've seen it daily on @BZ@IO, but something else is coming. Perhaps you should pay closer attention to the environment you've pivoted your career into. Pokemon is the way. And I've said that before, Pokemon is hot, sports cards are not. And if you want sports cards to be hot again, well, then you have to go back to its original model. And what original model is that? Affordability and affordable cards, not just cards for the 1% with a bunch of gaslighting. It is what it is. The sports card degens in the comments are punching the air. Yes. I mean, and you have to look at who are the sports card fans. I don't even know if, I'm a Gen X guy. I don't even feel like Gen X people are really like diving into sports cards currently. I feel like, if anything, the Gen X people are more likely diving into TCG. Why? Affordability. And you're getting awesome cards that are valued highly, that people really want. They probably want a lot of these Pokemon cards more than sports cards. Collecting Pokemon is like collecting Beanie Babies. I just can't. But people are spamming PSA with Pokemon submissions. Yeah, well, this is a wake-up call for people like this. We are currently living in the Pokemon TCG era. It's no longer a sports card era. It's not a sports card era, well, for the fact that Topps and Fanatics has ruined it for everybody, and they only cater to breaking companies. But even beyond that, if they were like gearing down, making everything more affordable, I'm just not sure what they would have to do to pull more people in, Sports are sports. And I'm not sure if you're starting to get a society that kind of looks at sports and they're just not as interested in it as they used to be. That very well could happen. I always thought about that when I was younger too, is, with all of these things coming into the market, I mean, we have smartphones. We have so much that we can do. Sports seems kind of boring to an extent to a lot of people. I enjoy watching sports. I like to watch football, basketball when I can, baseball. But overall, if you look at a kid, would they prefer to sit down and watch a baseball game or a football game, or go and hang out with their friends and play Pokemon? We all know the answer to that. Yeah, Pokemon is a kid's game that was ruined by fat scalpers that fight over packs like rabid dogs. It's disgusting to see how these animals act. It felt great being out a scalper and buying out a Walmart for my kids to open. Yeah, well, I hear that so much. It's, the poor kids, they can't open their things. Well, here's the issue is we live under the rules of capitalism. And I know that a lot of people don't like that, especially for collectibles, but it is what it is. And whenever you have a hot item, you're going to get the scalpers. I mean, I was seeing the same thing in the late 90s with eBay. I mean, whenever a big, gaming console would be released, I mean, already the big scalpers were putting the stuff up on eBay, in the late 90s, to sell for, big prices, Things have not changed since the late 90s. It's just, I think that people are getting exhausted. Or hear me out. Sports cards are overpriced. Yes, they are. Like last time I went to my LCS, I told the guy, I just feel like I have to be a millionaire to buy sports cards. I mean, you can't deny that fact. Lots of shops quit carrying sports cards completely and went full Pokemon. And if I had an LCS, I've said it before, I would have a very, very slim slice of pie for sports cards, and it'd all be, dedicated to TCG. Why? Well, you have to make a profit to survive, And a lot of these old guys that can afford sports cards, hey, good for them. But overall, the market is tanking. And I hear a lot of people talking about recession. Jeff, is there a possibility that in, say, 5 years that TCG just takes over and sports card interest fizzles out, mostly due to high prices and lack of scarcity with sports cards? Yeah, that's a big issue too, is the endless one-of-ones. Whenever I see a one-of-one that people are hyping up on social media or YouTube or wherever, and it's a sports card, I just kind of go, meh. I have seen too many one-of-ones. I mean, how many Shohei Ohtani one-of-ones have I seen in my lifetime? I don't own any of them. But let's face it, a one-of-one Shohei Ohtani just really doesn't feel very special now, does it? With the countless one-of-ones that I've seen. So, I don't know. I feel like sports cards need to pivot into a different way of appealing to customers. And the one of one, lottery ticket grift, I think people are burned out for the most part. When I wake up in the morning, my focus tends to be more on TCG. Why? I mean, well, that's where the interest in the market is currently, if you want to sit and watch sports card channels talk about sports cards, you have every right, to listen to them day and night. And if that's your interest, hey, it is what it is. But a lot of people have been broomed out of the sports card hobby for the fact that, well, there's a recession. Wages aren't creeping up as fast as people would like. There's a lot of, things going on in the country. Sports cards, to me, feel like a losing bet, a losing gamble to an extent. Unless you can get good deals on them. Overall, I sell more sports cards day in and day out over eBay than Pokemon. But how long is that going to keep happening to where I'm waiting for that to flip? I mean, I still sell my Pokemon cards, but typically my Pokemon cards are going, for a better price than a lot of my sports cards. To me, if we could watch Topps Fanatics go bankrupt, well, I would have an in, and a lot of other people would have an in to the sports card market again. I've said before, there's just been so many people who have been broomed out of this hobby who, stood by it for many, many years, including myself. I mean, I can't sit here and go on YouTube enough, crying about that fact, and it typically just falls on deaf ears. But the thing is we live under the rules of capitalism, and we have choice. And you see more and more people going back to the classic model of sports cards. And who's carrying on the classic model of sports cards? TCG is. TCG is more affordable. TCG allows you the opportunity to go and buy a $5 pack and hit a card that could be worth, $100,000 if not more. If you hit the right card, you're just not getting that option anymore in sports cards. I mean, you're just flat out not getting that option. Is there not as many breakers for Pokemon cards, so there's a lot more case hits out there? Or what exactly is the lure of Pokemon cards? And, if you're a sports card person, I'm kind of looking at the picture. I'm not going to pull up the picture, but it looks kind of like, someone who's, a little bit older than me, to say the least. If you're in your 60s or 70s, you're probably looking at people, why are you buying that stuff? It's just for kids. Well, yeah, the game aspect is for kids. Playing it is for kids. But, like for me, what do I collect for Pokemon? I like the big illustration cards, That's what I like, and that's what most people are chasing as well, are these big illustration cards. Like right now it's the big Mega Charizard, that's kind of the big chase for, Phantasmal Flames, and they're probably not as valued as much as they are because more people are hitting them, but people like that idea. That you can go and spend $5 or $10 and hit a big card. You cannot do that with sports cards, And then with sports cards, there's just so much of the shilling out, with mystery packs, and all this other garbage, to try and get a good hit. I feel like sports cards are meant for a bygone era to an extent. Why is that? Well, what can you do with a sports card? Well, you can be a big braggadocio and, brag about it and, I guess mark it up and sell it for a lot of money and keep doing that. But are you really having fun with that sports card? That's just it. The Pokemon gods are real. Charizard is not a sex addict and ACL always intact. People are just getting exhausted with buying into sports cards, player stock and having that player go off and just be, an idiot and completely ruin their career or ruin the value of the card, I think people are just starting to distrust the nature of humanity. You can trust a Charizard character a lot more and get a lot more value out of it than, say, a Wander Franco card, And we know that people were dumping a lot of money into Wander Franco because he was the big chase, and we saw what happened there. There is actual scarcity with Pokemon, and One Piece and the cards typically grade extremely well. You get more hits per box for less money. Exactly. I mean, I have been shouting that from the roost for a long time now. I mean, what is it that the sports card market will not get? That's just it. I ask myself every day, is when I look at the sports card market, I just look at a market that builds themselves up like big bodybuilders, This is the way you do it, kids. And the kids just turn around and run the little Pokemon Pikachu guy with their $5 in hand. And they're happy about it, What would that $5 get them at the sports card shop for sports cards? Not much at all, Like people are laughing at you, as you're walking out with your one little Series 1, pack of baseball cards that we all know is just worthless commons. Pokemon market wild or sports market sinking? Well, sports market is tanking. It's tanking for a lot of reasons. The recession to me is one of the biggest reasons. And the way that it's being shilled out from the corporations, strictly for breaking companies only. That's what they should start putting on card boxes, for breaking companies only, Do not purchase this if you're just a normal consumer. Why? Because you will get burned very bad. So, when you were out yesterday for Black Friday, if you went out, what did you see? Did you see people going crazy for sports cards? I didn't see that at Walmart. I saw sports cards, getting glossed over as usual, and people just jumping into the big restock of Pokemon. So, when you look at the next year, 2026, and even in the 2027, I'm trying to get sports card people to face the reality. Even Jeff Wilson, the big sports card investor guy, is facing a kind of a harsh reality here of the fact that, well, the market is going strictly TCG. Sports card people have become the minority. And you have to understand, why are they the minority? Well, one, you have to have a breaking company to enjoy sports cards. If you tell yourself that you're going to enjoy sports cards without owning a breaking company, you're lying to yourself. Two, the Michael Rubin effect, of just, very, very limited releases online for the best quality stuff that tends to go to bots and breakers. The high prices on those boxes as well. I mean, we saw just massive high prices for, just hobby boxes of, 2025, 2026 Topps basketball chrome, which is ridiculous, which should have been, close to, $100, $200 in my opinion. The sports card market builds themselves up on the shoulders of the past, of big cards from the days of Babe Ruth through Michael Jordan. But the problem with sports cards is most people who get into the sports card realm eventually get out for the fact that they're basically not allowed to own what they want to own. If you want to get that awesome Michael Jordan card, you have to have millions and millions of dollars, with an autograph, whatever, for the most part. Or even just, a basic, 1986 Michael Jordan rookie card. You have to have thousands of dollars, And I think that people are just getting burned out. I mean, I've worked and worked and worked many jobs. I've never really been paid a high wage ever. I've always been paid minimal wages, even for jobs where I have to have an education and all this and that. And so when people are making minimal wages, they're struggling to get by. They have kids that like stuff, and the hot button item on the market is Pokemon. Well, I believe that 2026 is going to be a year of devastation for sports cards. I believe you're going to see a lot of the values begin to tank. You're going to see a lot of the interest drift away in the TCG, both from kids and adults. I believe that this monopoly that Topps and Fanatics created with the sports leagues, because the sports leagues decide that they're going to get rich off of the Topps Fanatics monopoly as well, is blowing up in their face. And if they want to get it back on track, they're going to have to get more into a junk wax era setting where you have more licensed products from various corporations and companies that is affordable for the consumer. Anyway, if you have any different opinions on this, leave some comments. And I hope you had a great Black Friday, and I hope you enjoy this Thanksgiving weekend. Anyway, I'm out of here. Bye.